Welcome to Basketball Victoria's Technical Officials Trainee Mentor Course. I appreciate everyone's time today. The role of a trainee mentor, it's basically to provide guidance, motivation, emotional support, and role modeling to their mentee. A mentor may help with exploring pathways, setting goals, developing contacts, and identifying resources for their mentee. Ideally, the mentee is eager to learn, has respect for the person selected as their mentor, and is committed to the process. Some of the motivations to be a mentor is that you're interested in helping other officials, that you want to give back to your association, improve your communication and interpersonal skills, share your knowledge and experience, and develop your own officiating. I've left a little box off there that has the big dollar signs because I know that in some cases there is the added bonus of getting an extra bit of money on the game. The ideal characteristics is that you're an experienced official, that you have a positive attitude, your feedback is constructive, you set a good example, you understand your own limitations, and you're professional and respectful. An important part of mentoring is modeling behaviour. And you've all probably heard the phrase monkey see, monkey do. You might just be surprised how closely your mentee will watch your every move, and your actions will have a big impact on how they develop. The things that you can control are your professionalism, which is really about how you arrive, whether you arrive on time or early, how you look, you're in uniform and you look like you want to be there, and how you interact. Are you smiling and respectful to everyone that you interact with? And then your effort, your court presence, your mechanics and your signals, making sure that they're all top notch so that obviously what your mentee sees in you is what they're going to try and emulate. It's really important to have good communication, just in general in life, be respectful with your words, don't swear. An important one is clarify terminology. Sometimes we can assume what we're saying is known to the person we're saying it to. So make sure if you use any sort of jargon that you give a bit of a definition or ask them if they know what that is. With your tone, make sure you use a clear voice and remove any frustration from your voice when you're communicating with your mentee. The timing of when you communicate is really important. So you want to have conversations with them that's away from the other participants so they don't feel embarrassed. And if there has been an incident, don't jump right into giving feedback. Make sure you've given them some time to process what's going on. And your body language, you need to respect their personal space and keep your hands relaxed and your face neutral. How you apply being a mentor is through the C grade course. The initial 3 months after the C grade course, you'd like to stay in touch with your mentee, and all the first time. So the first time they get to do a under 18s game, or the first time they're the crew chief on the game, those sort of things are really important that you can help them navigate. As a mentor, you really want to understand the landscape you're operating in. So be confident in the expectations and requirements of your association. So that would relate to their policies and procedures, any systems they use, for example, RefBook. So you'd want to help navigate RefBook with your mentee. You want to discuss with the senior educator, in this case, Declan, on the core competencies and what's expected of you on court with your mentee. And then the venue and the competition, you really want to understand the bylaws, the games management system, and anything to do with the venue. And so when you are knowledgeable in these areas, it helps navigate it with the mentee. So you want to build a relationship with your mentee. It's really important that you focus on establishing trust, and that's really understanding the importance of privacy. You just don't want to assume that if they're telling you something that it's open to everyone to know about it. You want to engage them, so be proactive in that. Make sure that you approach them because they may be nervous or uncomfortable or unsure, and be friendly in that approach. You want to show an interest in them outside of their officiating, so who they are as a person, what they do, family, work, school, friends, those sort of things. And really important is to help them navigate their own network. So help introduce them to other officials so that they feel comfortable beyond you being at the stadium. And when you build a strong relationship, it's easier to deliver feedback and it's easier for them to receive feedback. When you're working with your mentee, You want to identify realistic and achievable goals. So the goals are what they want to achieve, and that could be simple as blow your whistle for out of bounds. It could be their first foul call. It could be throwing the jump ball at the start of the game. Could be responding to a coach query. The target is when they want to achieve it by. So you can have short-term and long-term targets. So short-term can be, for this game, we'd like to do the following, or by 3 weeks, I would like you to be able to show me that you can do X, Y, Z. Giving positive reinforcement is really important, especially in the moment, so that they know exactly what it is that they've done well. And it's also setting some acknowledgement, so doing it in front of other people. So, Sally did a really great job with this, and that really helps with them feeling confident. And just have an understanding of the difference between coaching and advice. Both are good. They're just, as long as they're relevant. And it's really important to know that feedback is expected in this role, but advice is really giving an opinion when asked. So try not to give advice unsolicited. You also want to create the ideal learning environment. You want to make it enjoyable so they can have fun, safe so that they can make mistakes, supportive so that they can feel confident, flexible so that they have opportunities. And an example of that is, if you can only ref Monday nights, but Monday nights is really challenging games, then they might withdraw because they don't feel they're up to that. So try and make yourself more available so that they've got as many opportunities to succeed as possible, and be inclusive so that they feel welcomed. How we implement all this is over the first meeting, the pre-game, in-game, post-game, and feedback to the senior educator. And we'll go through each of these now. At the first meeting, as I mentioned, be active in your approach because you're the person that's responsible for engaging them. Don't assume that they know your name. And when you ask their name, also ask their pronouns. This is something that's not familiar to everyone, but it is important going forward that we acknowledge that people have certain pronouns that they like to be referred to as. An example of that is I'm a she, her, but someone else might be a they, them. You want to understand the mentee's motivations for signing up to reffing. It could be as simple as they want to earn a bit of pocket money. They might want to meet some friends. They might want to keep fit. All of these are important to help you navigate what drives them in their officiating. It's also a great opportunity to talk about how your journey as a referee has gone. From simple as reminding yourself what it was like to be a junior referee, and you can talk to them about what you faced, your challenges, but also your successes and where you've got to and how rewarding it's been. We spoke about before is knowing about the mentee's interests. This would be a great opportunity to ask them those questions. It's also the time to talk about what their targets and goals are, but also what you see for them. You could also talk to them about ref book. You could talk to them about any of the rules of the game, the competition that you're coming up against. It might be a under 8s and 5 seconds in the key. It might be a senior game where there's a sin bin. Just talk to them about those sort of things and ask them if they've got any questions or concerns. I would allow about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour for this sort of meeting. And you can either choose to set up a time with them midweek or not involving the game, or you can ask them to come in a bit earlier from their first game and make sure that you're there to have that first meeting. In terms of the pre-game, you want to ask them how their morning, afternoon, yesterday, if it's an early game was. Like, you don't want to just go straight into the game stuff, because you can get a feel for them if they're having a good day, a bad day. It's really important that you're supporting them through this journey, and it's not just about the on-court. Talk about what they're excited about for the game or what they're most nervous about. And again, this helps you sort of create a template for what they're feeling in the moment. But then you need to focus them, and you can do this by setting the goal for the upcoming game. If it's their first game, you might simply set the goal as blowing their whistle for the first time. Speak about how you're going to manage them in game. So we're going to talk about all the elements to in game next, but this would be the time to highlight a few things. For instance, with shadowing them, if they're okay with you touching them on the arms to move their position? If they're not, then you need to find another way to do that. And just remind them that you're there to help the whole way. And this, I would allow 5 to 10 minutes for this pre-game. It doesn't need to be too extensive. So in the game, we're going to look at shadowing, the use of whistle, use of voice, signals, breaks in play, and protection. Before we go into that, identifying that there's a progression for the mentee, and it really can be fluid. It's not a fixed space, because they can be really confident on an under 12s game, but not be confident on an under 18s. They might be really confident after 6 games, but on their 7th game be having a bit of an off game, and they come back to, not being confident. So you have to really read that situation, and based on those sort of areas, we'll go into how to manage them in the game. So with shadowing, it's really about helping your mentee navigate the mechanics to officiate their area of responsibility. And you want to help them adjust their position to maintain the gap once they're in lead or trail. Be careful not to touch them unnecessarily. I know I just spoke about that before, but if you do have to adjust them and they're comfortable with that, please gently guide them on the outside of their arms, nowhere else. With the mechanics, you can see here, and this might be obvious because all of you have actually been a mentee at some stage. So when they're not confident, you're really right there beside them, supporting them. In lead, you're beside. In trail, you're just slightly behind and diagonal. And then in transition, you run the outside line with them, and make sure that you maintain that support all the way down. When they're becoming confident, you can give them some more space. Make sure you let them know that you're doing that, because otherwise they might try and stand where you are and get a bit confused. If you're unsure if they're ready, discuss the situation with the senior educator on the game. And if in doubt, give them a go, because you can always readjust back to standing right next to them. So with the transition of this sort of becoming confident shadowing, it's almost like a center to trail, which is a 3PO mechanic concept. So I'm not expecting you to know what a 3PO mechanic is, but the reality is that this is the center position here. So when you are in center, your mentee is in trail. And when you are in trail over here, when you go to trail, your mentee is in, when you go to trail over here, your mentee is in lead. So it's really important that you keep that space, navigate that space. And if you, again, adjust back to being close to them if they're not coping. So when they're confident, basically the mentee is in a normal 2PO mechanic with another senior official opposite them and off court with and you want to encourage them to use non-verbal signals to the other official, and you don't want to distract them by them focusing on you. You want them to focus on the other official on the game. If you can see that they're making eye contact with the other official and doing the correct mechanics, you would just, as they run past you, you'd give them a quick, thumbs up that they're doing well in that respect. So the use of the whistle, when they're not confident, as we spoke about before, we really expect that they would be able to blow their whistle for out of bounds. They don't necessarily need to know who it's out on, but at the very least, as soon as the ball is out of court and it's within their calling line, that they would make that call. So that's what you'd ask them to do at a bare minimum. For the obvious calls, it's okay if both whistles are blown or that the mentee might be slightly behind you. That's great, especially from a not confident point of view. And it's really important that, the mentor is responsible for the unclear calls without fail. As they're becoming confident, this is when you're giving them some space in your mechanics. You would hope by then that the mentee is able to call all the basic out of bounds and some traveling, and you would really only be calling the obvious calls, but you want to have a delay on this. So you want to encourage the mentee to be able to start making these calls. If you sort of have a delay and the coaches are getting frustrated, just make sure that you communicate to them that you have got it. You're just giving the mentee a chance to make that call. And it's still important that you would be responsible for the unclear calls. Just keep in mind with that positioning, it's almost like there's 3 or 4 officials on the court based on where you're standing. I just want to point out that it's important that you call what your mentee should be calling and seeing. It's not call what is impossible for them to see just because of your position. And that's a hard thing to navigate. So just try and remember that it's not your direct line, it's what the mentee can be seeing. As they're confident with the 2PO mechanics, you want to encourage your mentee to make the calls in their area of responsibility. And my apologies for this next one. Declan just told me beforehand that your mentor is off court. So the other official would only blow their whistle out of area for obvious misses, and the mentor would come on court if the game was getting out of hand. So the use of voice, we want to make sure that when we're in the not confident space, that we're very specific. For instance, take a step off the baseline and where to look. It could be just as simple as watch the ball, match up, don't watch the ball. You know, just in that very initial phase, we don't want to overcomplicate things. As they're becoming more confident, we're fine-tuning their mechanics and where they're looking. So an example of this is move towards the split line or watch the rebounders on the shot, not the actual shot itself. You might say something like watch the post players or watch the screeners. So yeah, just starting to build more language in that. And as they're confident, you really want to keep the in-game feedback to obvious trends in passing. So you want to make sure that you're saying things like, you know, need to step up in trail a bit more, watch the rebounding fouls, get to lead quicker. Just make sure that when you're talking, that they're not, you're not talking so much that they're focusing on you and instead of the game. You don't want to be distracting in that. So with signals, the bare minimum, your mentee should mirror every single you do, even if it's delayed. So if you put your hand up for a foul, you're going to ask them to put their hand up for a foul. And it's really important that they get into that habit. In terms of signaling to the bench, we really want them to be signaling to the bench from the very beginning. And what you would do is make sure they know what they're going to say and what they're going to signal and in what order. And you can take your time with this. You don't need to rush it. Make sure if you feel like they've got no idea, just stand behind them and whisper what they need to say. And depending on if they make, you know, mistakes with that, adjust it in the moment. Even though that can be a little embarrassing or maybe uncomfortable, it's really important that it's in the moment that you correct their number signal or how they said it. Make sure they stand still when they're signaling. Those sort of things are really important to do in the moment. When you've got breaks in play, stick to discussing one point and make sure it's something that they can actually fix in the moment. So, you know, you don't want to start to talk about areas of responsibility in a timeout. You might be speaking about something as simple as, you know, make your whistle louder when you blow it, you know. Allow for a question because they might have something that they're desperate to clarify. And if you can't finish it, make sure that you make a mental note to come back to that topic in the post-game. It's really important that you protect the mentee all throughout the game. So speak to the coaches beforehand and ask that they direct any queries to you. Don't allow anyone to talk to the mentee. They really need to just focus on learning the game and step up for any disciplinary action. So this might sound obvious, but if you're okay with a coach sort of being a bit frustrated and waving their hands in the air and yelling out something across the court, and normally you'd be like, oh, I'm just going to ignore that. This is not the time to ignore it because you want to set a template for your mentee. So this would be a time to set up a formal warning and or a tech if you need to escalate it. And just remember that servicing the game is still the priority. So if the game starts to get a bit close or a bit challenging, you might just want to say to your mentee, hey, I need to step up a little bit here and focus on the game. Just stay with me, but I'm not going to focus on you so much because at the end of the day, we want to get the game right. In the post game, You want to acknowledge a specific goal they achieved. So if what we set before the game was for them to blow their whistle on an out of bounds and they did it, make sure you revisit that. Hey, great job blowing your whistle on that out of bounds. It was really, really good. Then you want to highlight something you'd like them to work on and how. And it might be as simple as, hey, we really need you to get to lead quicker. And the way you do that is to read the play, make sure that you see the rebound and then take off. Or, don't worry about turning your head back and slowing yourself down, just get to position. You also want to recognize something they did well or above expectations. So if the goal you set was for them to blow their whistle out of bounds, but they actually were able to tell you who it was out of bounds on, then that's something you would recognize in them. Or they call a foul when you're not expecting them to, or they signal really well to the bench. Find something that you're congratulating them on. You also want to ask how they felt and if they have any questions off the back of the game. And then you want to make sure that you thank them for the game. So giving feedback to the senior educator is a really important part of you being a mentor. One of the things that you'll give feedback on is their performance. Obviously, there's going to be ref coaches and other people wandering around, but your take on it is as important on what they did well, what they need to work on, their effort that they put in. You might give some recommendations on their next appointment, like whether they can step up or whether they need to stay at the standard they're at. And it may be in a written form or it might just be a verbal. That's up to whoever's running the course. It's also important to give a bit of a take on their attitude. So how they were receptive to the pre-game, how they responded in-game, if they had anything positive or negative in the post-game. And it's also how they interacted with the other participants and the other partner. If you do have any concerns about your mentee, you want to make sure that you clarify what those concerns are with the senior educator. And if you need to, you may need to document them and escalate them if they are quite serious. But just keep in mind all the time with that the privacy is very important. Don't discuss it with other people. Keep it really intimate to yourself and the senior educator. So the benefits to the mentee is that when they've got you supporting them, they're going to look forward to their games. They're going to feel confident and they'll perform with confidence. And when those two happen, they stay involved longer. So you're likely to keep them in the program and they'll feel valued, which is really important just from a human aspect. The benefits to you as the mentor is that you're recognized as a leader in your association. You're having a positive impact on someone else's life. And you develop your interpersonal skills, which will stay with you forever.